Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ask a Trader session. We moved it to this Friday because I sent out the wrong link yesterday. And yeah, so I was a big dum-dum and messed it up, but wanted to make sure that I had a session this week for Ask a Trader. And so here we are today. And let me just make sure the chat is set up so that if you have questions, I'm able to answer your questions, anything that you have. And that's really the purpose, is to, um, make sure that, if you have questions or you want me to look at a ticker or a chart, I'm able to do that. And I'm just going to throw a test in here. If I could just get a verification that you could see that, that would be fantastic. Can you see that? Can somebody just say thumbs up or yes that you could see it? Sure. No, so not yet. Try this again. Test. Can you guys see that one? On everyone. I have it on there where I can chat with everyone and everybody can see it. So I'm going to assume that you can see that. But for whatever reason, you just didn't put put a yes in there. But we're just going to get into taking a look at the broader markets again. If you have questions or if you want me to look at a ticker, please put that in there for me. So again, just use that chat, say, hey, can you check out this ticker? Or if you have a question, put it in there and I'll make sure that I get to that for you. All right. So let me share my screen and let's start taking a look at the broader markets. That's a good place to start. So we just can take a look and see what has transpired so far this week. And so here is the SPX. This is where I always start looking at the S&P 500. And you could see that we had a nice move higher this Wednesday because we got our inflation report. And for the first time in what seems like a long time, the inflation report came in cool, and that just pushed things higher. And then we made a new all-time high. So the markets continue to be bullish. And you can see that these last 2 days, including today, you do have some selling. Nothing to panic about. This is just people taking their profits, which you can expect whenever you make a new all-time high, because if you are going to push higher, the smart thing to do is to take your money, right? And so we're seeing that here on the SPX. The same thing on the Qs, this being the technology index, all your tech stocks. You could see here, we had this really, if you go look at all the broader markets, you could see this beautiful double bottom pattern, it's really textbook, and it broke above that neckline and has pushed higher, made new all-time highs. But the same thing that we're seeing on the SPX, we're seeing here on the Qs, which is that pullback. You have people taking profits because we made that new all-time high. And you could see that even today we sold down, but we're getting bought back up. So people are still coming into the market. They're still buying things up. And we're just going to continue to push higher from here. Now, we might have a little bit of sideways movement in the meantime before we do start rocketing higher, but the trend overall is bullish. And then if we take a look at the Dow Jones DIA, ticker symbol DIA, again, you could see that double bottom pattern here. We broke that neckline. This thing is pushed to new all-time highs. And the same concept. We sold down a bit from the all-time highs, but you could see this lower wick here. People are still coming in. They're still buying because we're in a bullish trend. IWM, this is small cap stocks. Again, you're seeing the same pattern here. Double bottom, right? Here's your neckline. We closed above it. We pushed higher. Now, the unique thing about IWM, and remember that IWM is your small cap stocks. When you take a look at this, you can see that we are quite a ways away from all-time highs. That would be $244.36. And small caps are very much rate sensitive. And what that means is until the Fed starts cutting rates, we're probably not going to see it pushing up into this range. And so we're going to have to just watch and wait for those rate cuts to come through. And when we do see that, then we're going to see IWM pushing higher. Now, it has made a little bit of a push since cool inflation came in on Wednesday, but you can see there's still lots of room for this thing to run. And then if you look at the volatility index, this is just how much volatility is in the markets, and you can see that, you know, it spiked whenever we had the Iranian and Israeli conflict, but now this thing is just dropped. That's good for stocks. When volatility is low, stock prices are typically higher, and we're seeing that with all the all-time highs that we've made up until this point. So that's just a snapshot of the broader markets. What I'm looking for on the SPX, this is the S&P 500. You know, my target price is 57.50 before the end of the year. It's going to take some time to hit it. I don't think it's just going to be a straight shot there, but that's where I'm looking for this thing to eventually end up by the time we wind down 2024 and close out the year. So definitely watching that that price target, and that's what I'm looking for. Any questions on any of that? Any tickers that you guys want me to take a look at? And if not, then I'll just go ahead and run through a few tickers here, just kind of give you my take on some things I'm paying attention to for the next couple of weeks. And then we'll go from there. But again, go ahead, just throw your questions in the chat if you have any, and I would be more than happy to answer them. So the big stock that we want to keep an eye on here for next week is NVIDIA. Yeah, maybe I'm kind of an NVIDIA fanboy, sure, whatever. But you can see here we have earnings that are showing up on the 22nd of May, which is next Wednesday. And you can see that the last time they reported earnings, you had this nice gap up, and we pushed higher, made all-time highs here at 974.99. Now, since then, we haven't been able to pierce that price level. But you could see the bulls have tried to push this thing up. They tried again here, and we had some selling. We're coming back down into the 10. And so that sets us up for this week's earnings report and what potentially is going to happen on earnings. And I've said for quite some time that this thing is going to hit 1,000. Now, when, I don't know. And could we see a pullback? Yes. But typically, sometimes what you see with earnings is people will buy the rumor and sell the news. And what I mean by that is you could see this thing pushing higher next week into earnings, and then it sells off. And potentially we would come down and fill this gap from the last time we had earnings. That could potentially happen. Or you can get a massive gap if you go back to last May. This is when things really started taking off for NVIDIA. You had almost like $100 gap that happened right around the same time, and it held and it pushed higher. So what do I foresee here next week? I don't see $100 gap, although it's possible. Anything's possible when you're talking about NVIDIA. But I would think probably a nice modest gap. We get into 1,000, and then we sell down a little bit and just kind of move sideways. But this is definitely one to pay attention to because it is going to drive the markets. NVIDIA will drive the markets. If they just absolutely crush it and destroy it upon earnings, then you're going to see the entire market just moving higher. And you'll see other chip companies like your AMDs, your ARMs, Super Microcomputers, Taiwan Semiconductors, all those it's going to be a sympathy play. They'll move higher as well. So definitely keep an eye on NVIDIA. Again, that's next Wednesday that they're going to be reporting earnings. Wade says kind of, yeah. Big time fanboy NVIDIA, right? So this is one that I'm watching. You know, you guys can keep an eye on it. We're getting a nice little pullback here today on it. You know, you can maybe grab a couple shares if you wanted to take it long. I'll just show you some other things that I'm keeping an eye on here. Coinbase. You can see that this trend line has been established. It's been serving as resistance, that every time it hits it, it fails. And what we need to see from Coinbase is a nice strong push above that, a close above that, and then it could start moving higher. And this is very similar to SMCI, what happened with SMCI this week. You can see this upper level of resistance, this trend line that for the longest time, it just kept struggling after it hit all-time highs. And then what happened this week? Boom, it got above it and it pushed higher. Now we're getting some selling that's coming in, completely natural, nothing to freak out about. But this looks very, very similar to Coinbase. So if I go back over to Coinbase, it's retesting this trend line, and all we need to get is a push above this, and this thing could run back up into the 280s and even the 300s. Now keep this in mind on Coinbase, its all-time high is $430, right? So there's lots and lots of room for this thing to go. And if you just look at Bitcoin, same thing. You have this channel here on Bitcoin kind of bouncing off this resistance area. We're closing above it. We closed above it on Wednesday after that cool inflation report came out, and we're kind of hovering around here. We're going to push back up into those all-time highs, and my actual price target on Bitcoin at some point within the next 6 to 8 months is 100,000. That might sound a little crazy, but just go back and look at perspective on Bitcoin here. Sure, we made a new all-time high, but it's only 7% higher than what it was back in 2021, right? So there's more meat left on this bone for this thing to run. And hopefully you were a buyer of Bitcoin when it dipped down into this 100 SMA, because, I expect this thing to rally. Doesn't mean that it has to, but the chart looks pretty bullish to me. And this is definitely one thing that I'm watching, really all things Bitcoin, crypto related. I think there's some opportunity here for this thing to move. And then in terms of anything else that I'm looking at or keeping an eye on, the other thing would be Netflix. And here's why, is because a lot of companies have made all-time highs in this bull market that we've been in. Microsoft has done it, Meta has done it, Nvidia has done it, AMD has done it, SMCI has done it, Amazon has done it. And so there are some companies, these laggards, I guess you can call them, they're slackers, they still have yet to do that. One of them being Netflix. So this is one I'm keeping an eye on. And you can see here, after two nice gap ups on earnings, we got up here in October for Netflix after a big pullback. We gapped up again in January, and then we gapped down this most recent earnings. And notice how it bounced perfectly off that 100 SMA. So now if you take a look at it and see what it's doing, it's just consolidating right above this 50 SMA and this 10 EMA. And this all-time high, it's going to hit it. It's just a matter of when. So, had this nice little pullback. We're consolidating, and you could see it's really just accumulating here. So I'm expecting a big move on Netflix at some point. I don't know when that will come, but that's one to keep an eye on here soon. And you can see this trend line that exists here. Maybe we push up into this and go beyond that 700 point in terms of all-time high. So that's one that I'm keeping an eye on and I'm looking at. And let me see if I have any others. The one last one that I'll just take a look at in terms of value, and that would be Boeing, right? You could see how far down this thing has fallen from. This isn't even an all-time high. This 267, but it hit 267 in December, and it came down. It dropped $108. Now, there's been a lot of negative news surrounding Boeing with doors flying off mid-flight and all this negligence in terms of, how they're maintaining their planes. But keep this in mind. Who is the biggest customer to Boeing, who provides a ton of money here? It's the US government. They're not going to let this company fail. And you could see this thing hit perfectly off this 200 SMA on the monthly, and it started to push higher. And we did close above this 50. And if you look above this, sure, you do have some moving averages here above it. But if it could start creeping through those, there's some room to the upside. And so this could be a nice little value, something cheap for you to take advantage of. And you do have a double bottom here. You could see it right here. This is a higher low, lower low double bottom. Here's your neckline. So if this thing would retest back into that neckline, potentially you could get some shares, maybe go with some call options, and then ride this thing higher as it pushes up, right? Because stocks don't stay down forever, right? Unless they're trash companies. Sure, Boeing is beat up and they've done some questionable things, but this could be a move that we're talking about for quite some time. So any questions that you guys have, I'm just going to open it up to the chat. All right, we got some down here in the chat here. How do you see chips, AMD, MU, ARM? Goodbye now at this particular dip. Will they push up with NVIDIA? What about Tesla? All right, so I'll look at both of those. So, so AMD, I mean, after it made those new all-time highs, let me just delete this from my screen. So 227.18, and that was back March 8th. This thing pulled back significantly down to the 200 SMA on the daily. So it's about a 38% correction. So now you're finally seeing this getting a bounce. Got rejected off the 50 today, but that's normal. But once it gets above here, there's nothing above it, right? If we go to the weekly, there's nothing above it. If we go to the monthly, there's nothing above it. So if I'm looking at what has the most meat on the bone in terms of reward versus your risk, Paul, A&D is probably up there, right? If we just go take a look at NVIDIA, it's very close to that all-time highs. But again, it's NVIDIA, it's the king of AI. But just looking at the chart, if we're just going exclusively off the chart, and it's just a matter of when AMD gets above that 50, nice strong close, look at this big area that it has that it could push higher, right? And it's about $57. Okay. And today, AMD there was an announcement that AMD is partnering with Microsoft to make chips. So they're going to be competing. So this is a good value. Keep an eye on this one. Okay. So in chips in general, anything AI, if you can get things at good values, AI is not going anywhere. If anything, it's going to become more prominent. But you want to find things that are in good buying spots so that you're not overspending for it. And AMD is one of those stocks. Okay. And then I had a question about Tesla. What about Tesla? This is from Michael. So Tesla, I mean, this thing has just gotten crushed since last July on earnings, and it's just been dropping. And we did bottom out at 138 and pushed higher, got up to 198, and then we've just been retesting since then. And notice we've been finding support right here on the 50. There's been this trend line that's come through here, and we're hanging out. We're consolidating, building some pressure. But you could see it got rejected off that 100 SMA on the daily, but this thing has room to go. But if you look at the headlines on Tesla, there's so much negative news around it. Politically, there are a lot of people out there who despise Elon Musk and what he stands for. And so, this guy's taking it from every angle. But the thing to keep in mind, he's a brilliant businessman. And what he's trying to do with robo-taxis and AI and his Optimus robot and just you name it, he's got like 10 companies, SpaceX. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the rockets that they can launch and they come back and land. They're reusable. Guy's brilliant. So Tesla's not going to hang out down here for long. We're eventually going to push higher, but it does have to get through this 100 first. That's at 188. Once it could do that, the 200's the next in the way. And then from there, if it could get above those SMAs, there's nothing above it. All-time high on Tesla, 414. And you could see just how far away that is. So if you wanted to start accumulating shares on Tesla, you could do that because it's not going to stay down here forever, right? Just like we talked about Boeing. Stocks take a hit, they drop, but then eventually investors come back in, they buy it up. And if you look at Apple, same thing, right? Recently, look what happened with Apple. Dropped, boom, got down to 163. What happens? This is right there by the 100 SMA on the weekly. Buyers come in, they push it up. We're getting ready to go retest all-time highs, right? So still bullish on Tesla. It just might take a little bit of time to get there. Is AMD a good buy around 164? I mean, you could snag some shares here. Again, I don't know how. I mean, we could see another tiny little pullback into the 10, and you could wait for that to try to get it a little bit cheaper. What's interesting here is that you got this sandwich of moving averages. You got the 50, you've got the 100 SMAs, and then you got the 50 EMA, the 20 EMA, the 10 EMA, and it's just kind of compressing. When I see that, that tells me there's pressure building and you're going to get a strong gap out of there. Would not be surprised on Monday to see a big gap from there. So is it a good place to buy? It could be with the chart. You can, as always, protect yourself the downside, and you could catch a good move there, right? But that's got to be, that depends on your, your trading and investing style. But I like that confluence of moving averages and the pressure that's building there. So any other questions? I got another one. On your video for routines, why take a peek at 4 a.m. and 8:30 when you could look at everything at 8:30 review? Because I'm obsessed. No, just because I like to get a feel for the price action early on. And I it's almost like when I go to sleep at night, I'm like a kid before Christmas. I can't wait to see what the price action is in the morning. So part of it is I'm excited to see it and I don't want to wait that long. And so I get up and I'll check it. But for me, it works for me. It's my routine works. It helps me be successful, or at least that's what I tell myself. And it gives me a good feel. All right, here's where the price action is this early. And then I could start formulating, all right, compared to how the candles closed the previous day, this is what I'm anticipating. So it's just it's new information that I'm getting that I'm able to make evaluations and judgments about how I'm going to trade that particular day. Right. So you don't have to do that. That's just me. You have to find what works for you. But yeah, I love this stuff. Any other questions? Looks like we're getting a little bit of buying coming in here at the end of the day. You can see we shifted over to green here. The other thing today is options expiration day. Typically, you see some pretty wild movements. So if we just pull up the SPY and go to the 3-minute, you could see, just today, just kind of choppy drop and then pushing higher. So wouldn't be surprised to see, some buying come in here at the end of the day. But yeah, so if you guys don't have any other questions, that's going to be Ask a Trader for this week. I'll be doing this every week, except the week that I'm on vacation, which will be at the end of June. But I'll be back here next week. And, please keep coming back. I'll have the video uploaded. You could watch this. Did want to share with everybody that I do have a day trading boot camp that I'm going to be teaching coming up June 3rd. It's 11 sessions plus one coaching session with me. If that's something that you're interested in, it's on my Facebook page, or you could just message me on Facebook. Let me know. And yeah, we'll be back here next week. Looks like I got one more thing here in the chat. Still want email from options class to practice. Yeah, so I sent out that email, Paul. So I want you guys to set up the strangle or straddle yourself. So you're going to identify those strike prices that you're purchasing the call and the put at, and just write down the prices where you're simulating where you're buying it at. And then we're going to look at what those options are priced when we come to class on Thursday to compare and see what your profit will be. Okay. So that's your homework. All right. Yeah, I already sent the email. Yep. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me here today. I'm out on my balcony enjoying it's kind of cloudy weather. So waiting for some sunshine, but I hope you guys have a great weekend. I appreciate you being here with me, and I'll see you back here next week for another edition of Ask a Trader. Thank you guys so much.